Lily. Thomas. You are here. I can feel it.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the medium. This is our last section. We are going to head into the bunker and see what we can learn about why Thomas and Lily stayed here and why Thomas separated us after the fire. So I don't know. No, I think we're just going to walk right in. All right, there's a light in here. Ooh, lantern. An active one. Let's see. So the last of our documents, I think I have gotten all the collectibles so far in the game, so if anybody's using this as collectibles walkthrough, this should be the last of your documents in this area. And there's one that I ended up missing my first time. I'll try to make sure I don't miss it this time. A thin line. Here's what, crossed out I know. I think I know. Here's what I think I know. The powers come from the same place, but they can manifest in different ways. She seems to exist in both places, as if her mind can inhabit two bodies at the same time. To her, whatever happens in one place affects the other. Does she see the line between the two? Or are they one and the same? New hypothesis. Death thins out the veil between worlds, so that a newborn mind never has to split. Makes sense. In a weird, fucked up way. Pardon my Anglo-Saxon, that's not how I wanted to start the video. Alright. So I believe we're going to have a few documentaes in this part of the game, if I'm recalling. So, this is starting to look more like a survival bunker. Which, when you say bunker, this is what I would think of more. Because previously, like I said, it looked a lot more like a sewer. Oh no, what am I doing here? I'm assuming I gotta get the little green thing, get the little 50 on there, okay. Ooh.
No, don't do this to me.
Didn't like that. I'm assuming I can't do it from that room. Okay, there's a light. This is the case where you want to go towards the light.
Bust it open. From the inside.
Yeah. What would have the force... what would have the strength to force that... to dent a door like that? I think we're starting to get a clear picture of what's happened here.
Ah, yes.
Okay. I probably should inspect...
This was definitely Lily's place. Where he kept her.
Alright. Okay, butterfly motif seems to be common here. Those almost look like Rorschach blots, too. That's kind of interesting. Alone. Salt. Who knew it was that simple? A bit of alchemy, some spiritual infusion, and there you have it. Looks like the folk tales were true, after all. Anyway, the room is ready, and it works. It actually works. For the first time in my life, I can feel alone. It feels fucking wonderful. Pardon my Anglo-Saxon. Jeez. Thomas, my man. Okay, so we're in Lily's room. Why is he leaving notes in Lily's room? Okay, the next one...
Quite the selection. So she could doll herself up with no one to see her. Maybe he meant well, but somehow this just feels sadistic.
I don't know. She keeps saying this like...
She'd be a grown woman by now, but the room is still all dolls and unicorns.
She makes it sound like Thomas did something wrong, but I'm not...
Again with the salt. The whole room is lined with it.
We don't have the full picture.
Little windows into the world. It's something, I guess. Sunshine doesn't really translate to text, though.
Thomas has a pretty strong personality. I don't think we should, but he's always...
Imagine being locked up in this place. Having a needle shoved into your arm day in, day out.
Sodium
You
chloride.
deserve this, Lily.
Why would he be giving her sodium chloride? Why? Why would he be giving her a salt solution? I bet that's what... Okay. That's starting to make sense, I guess. Okay, so I'm assuming we need to... I'm assuming we need to power this place up so I can explore the rest.
Burnt to a crisp.
Yeah.
Guess I should look for a spare.
Okay. Let's test it. So you're not doing much. You're not doing much. You're doing a little bit more. Ooh. And
Let there be light.
okay.
Nice decor. Very minimalist.
Yeah. So this is the kitchen. Let's see. Just me and her. It's quiet now. Just me and her. Just me and her. It feels strange, but in a good way. How it should be. I best enjoy it while it lasts. Already started moving the workshop over to the hotel. If anything happens, I don't want her anywhere near it. I'm going in soon to get him back. This only ends in one of two ways. Either both of us are coming back, or neither. Huh. Thomas is talking about himself, I think. Remember when he's talking about his spirit self, the first time we went into his memory, said, "You send me away until you need me." All right. We'll come back to this room. I know there's more to look for here, but what was the point of that? Just some tunes to listen to? I'm okay with music. With my luck, I'm going to get a copyright claim. Is this Thomas's workspace?
Looks like he could never quite let go of his passion. In another life, perhaps.
Oh, my dad. That's Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, isn't it? I'm really glad I turned that on. I absolutely love her. It's a shame to be talking over this. Keeping distance. She almost saw me today. Sensed me. I should have known. I need to be more careful. Keep my distance. Crossed out, it's just that. Crossed out, I just. How much you want to bet he's talking about me? Thomas is keeping an eye on me. I mean, who wouldn't? I'm his daughter, but... Not a day goes by I don't think of her. Crossed out, I think. I know I did the right thing leaving her at the hospital. It's better this way. She's better this way. But I keep thinking of that day. When it finally happens, when she discovers what she really is, she'll be confused, afraid. I should be there for her, to help her make sense of it all, to tell her it's all right, No, she'll make it through. She's strong, just like her mother. Huh. So, we know he was keeping an eye on us. Funeral home, the last goodbye, Jack Orkin, telephone number. Don't. He was thinking about calling. Yeah, I guess she probably ended up with Jack through probably through recommendation or orphanage. Maybe. I couldn't see Jack being the type to go to an orphanage.
This was definitely Thomas's workspace. I can sense the determination. Whatever he was working on, he really gave it his all. Were you trying to send the monster away? Or to get your other self back?
Hypothesis. When experiencing trauma, the soul can split into two separate entities in order to, crossed out, deal with B, mitigate the damage. Observation. The entities can remain, crossed out, friendly, agreeable, or turn hostile towards each other. How to destroy one without destroying the other. So, I think that's it. I think we've gotten all collectibles at this point. There shouldn't be any others left. That does not mean I'm going to stop looking for things, though. That is... I still can't get over that Mary Elizabeth McGlynn did a song for this. That makes me think that... I bet Akira had something to do on this game. I bet he did the soundtrack. Akira, sorry. Okay, I think we got everything in here. Around. How much do you want to bet? Which means I obviously need to go and look for the soundtrack for this game. Okay, stop. Tank controls, stop. Okay, so what's in here? Because I know I didn't do a few things.
Huh. Mold. It looks pretty fresh. Someone's been here recently.
Uh-huh. Okay. If anybody is not familiar with Elizabeth and Akira, go check them out. They are amazing. They did a lot of the soundtrack work for Silent Hill games. The Silent Hill games.
If I find enough pieces, I might be able to get to the other side.
Okay, so it looks like...
Better get to it, Alice.
Better get to it, Alice. I like that. Looks like the 3 pieces missing. Okay, so I probably could have triggered that earlier and got them while I was walking around, but... Oh, there's one.
Okay, here's one. So far, so good.
I'm okay with listening to this again. Any in here? They're probably in the other rooms because they want you to look for the documents. And you've already probably scoped out this room. Well, actually, you would have had to have scoped out this room to an extent, but you probably explored it already. So there's probably one in here. There you go.
There. Another one.
Alright. Have I got... Yeah, this is Thomas's room. Okay. There we are.
This should be enough. Let's make magic happen.
Through the looking glass. Nope, that's wrong way. Yeah, they're painting a picture of what was really going on here. if you're following through with those documents and what we've been seeing. And it can help it notice that the music cut off. Alright.
And there it was. The moment we'd finally met.
It's you.
Thomas?
In a way, yes.
Wait. You're the other one. The spirit. But the Hound... I thought you were gone.
Gone. No, no. Trapped. I spent years in Henry's fucked up world. Oh, when you sent him away, I could finally break free. That's why you're so important. You can finish this.
Where is he? Where is my father?
I don't know. For the first time in my life, I don't feel his presence. I've been away for so long. Could you stay for a moment? Tell me how all this started.
It all starts with a dead girl. What about Lily? Did my father...
No. He couldn't have. He wouldn't. He loved her too much. Both of you.
So, what happened to her? What is this place?
This is where he kept her. That cell back there, it only exists in one world. Keeps the other one out. He built it so that he could be alone. It's the only place he could feel separated from his powers. From me. Came in handy once Lily became unstable.
Unstable? What do you mean?
She's a medium too, Marianne. A powerful one. Guess it runs in the family. When Richard hurt her, you know, something inside her, something terrible. And it was only a matter of time before it got out. It's what your father feared. What he tried to avoid.
That's why he called me. But that means...
Yes. She's still alive. There's still a way to save her. You have to find her, Marianne.
Where is she? Where is my sister?
You know where.
The lake.
It's coming. Time for you to go. I'll hold it off for as long as I can.
I'm not leaving you.
You can't always save everyone, Butterfly. Trust me, I know. And I'm sorry.
No.
So if you follow back through those documents, Thomas was talking about finding someone. He was talking about his spirit self. So apparently when he went into Henry's mind, his spirit self got trapped.
This is it. The place from my dream. I've walked this path 1,000 times in my mind. I know every inch of it. But this time, something is different.
And Lily was being kept in the bunker to keep the mob from getting out. Of course, that didn't quite work out.
I'm getting close. I can feel it. I can feel it so clearly now.
So the mob was a part of her then. It just latched on to other people, is what it sounds like. It was the same as the Hound is a part of Henry, and the Child Eater is a part of Richard. She's a lot older than you would think.
You finally made it.
Lillian.
I've been waiting for you, little sister.
Lily, I didn't know. I couldn't remember. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It was better that way. At least you had a life. For a while.
Lillian.
That day when the fire broke out at our house, I made a deal. The part of my soul that was tormented was set loose.
You mean the monster? But why?
To save you. It helped us escape the flames, but in return, I had to set it free. Free to devour, to destroy, to kill.
The Neva massacre.
Yes. All those people died so that we could live. And because I lived, so did my demons. Father knew my powers were too dangerous. He left you at the hospital so you could have a normal life.
And what about you? Did he try to...
No. Maybe he should have. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he locked me away. But he only delayed the inevitable. Monster, it got out. And now you're here. You're the only one who can fix this. You. We both share our father's gifts, but also his fate. And the dream.
The dream? But... all I see is a girl. You. Shot dead. Here, on this pier. Hasn't it already happened?
No. The dream. It's what I want to happen.
What?
It all ends in me.
But... No! No!
Can't send a spirit away while the host is still alive. That's why you couldn't destroy the monster. That's why Sadness didn't want to go.
But... You're my sister.
That's why it has to be you. I'm not strong enough. It won't let me. Only you can end this. Only you can fix what our father could not.
Lillian, I can't. Please, don't make me do this.
It's the only way to destroy it. To prevent further bloodshed.
Lily?
Marianne? What's going on?
Skin suit. Now too small. Constricting. Outgrown her. Don't leave her. Suit. Light. Almost gone. Not dark yet. But it's getting there.
There is another way.
Marianne. No.
What is she doing? It changes nothing.
Like you said, I'm your only chance. Aren't I? You need a medium strong enough to sustain you. The others, they only lasted for so long before you broke them down.
Marianne, please. I don't want
Maybe
this.
it's not your choice. Maybe this is my story after all. No! Don't do this!
Please, sister. Set me free.
No! Stay back! Stay back!
Has to be you. He'll never stop.
Finish this.
Only you can end this.
You can't always save everyone, Butterfly.
It all starts with a dead girl.
Voices, voices deep inside me keep calling, they're calling. Voices, voices deep within me, they tease me. Why can't I break free? Voices all around me whisper to me, someone make them go away. Voices walk beside me, hide behind me. Please make them go away. Someday I'll find my own way. Won't look back on all this pain and sorrow. Some way there'll be a new day, and the road before me I will follow. Voices in my head echo all that's left unsaid from the dead. They said, keep ringing in my head, and these voices in my soul know that I'm not in control. Let me go, let go. No one ever has to know. Crying tears in isolation, the lost time, what was mine, searching, shivering in the darkness of my mind. I'm so blind, screaming breaks the silence. No reliance from my fading
All right, so that is the end of the medium. We explored the bunker. We got some answers to questions. We have other questions that I've had that come up from that. Questions I still don't have answered because the game probably doesn't want to answer them or doesn't want them answered. And we had a very emotional end scene there following the bunker when we went out to the lake. So I want to talk a little bit about what we just went through, and then I kind of want to see if I can lay this out in chronological order, because I think that's the part that tends to distort this. It's not that the game did a bad job of laying it out for us. I think there's just so much that goes on in the game that you tend, for me at least, I tend to, I need to, go back and rethink about some of the stuff. And there's some things we just didn't know at this point that we know. We can go back and say, oh, that makes sense, with this happening. So we went into the bunker where Thomas was staying. It looked like they had been living there. Of course, the house is burned down, so they weren't living in the house. They were living in the bunker. So Thomas and Lily were in the bunker. There was a kind of storage room. There was a kitchen. There was a kind of a bathroom type area. There was a workspace that Thomas had, and then there was a kind of major heavy locked door in the back, which was set up for Lily. And from the documents we read, there were a couple of things. One thing, he was keeping her down there because of things that had happened previously. We know from we kind of had the idea going that she was either the origin of the Maw. I used the word host previously, and she used it there too in this, which is nice because I'm like, okay, we're on the same page. She is the original host for the Maw, I think, because I was kind of going back and forth on whether the Maw was a creation of her, something that came out of her, or if it's something that came out of other people, but it can latch on to other people, apparently. I believe she needs to be alive for it to be active, though, or at least I thought. But then we had that situation where Henry died, I believe, and the Hound stayed active. So it probably could host jump, which is what it sounds like it's been wanting to do this whole time. It keeps talking about us like we're a skin suit, like it's shopping at a clothing store, which is not cool. And so Thomas was keeping Lily in this room to prevent the Maw from getting out, is essentially what we were getting. He was keeping her locked down there. Thomas was also doing research. Some of that we got to see was he was trying to find ways to contain it, is what I took away from that. There was salt all over the room. He had a saline IV set up in the room, and I think he was using that to suspend the Maw in that area. I think that's what he was doing, and he said it was working. The IV, I'm thinking, was probably to sedate it, sort of, through her. I'm guessing, because that would had to have been for Lily. But there was also salt all over the room. Because I can't see why you would give somebody an IV drip of sodium chloride. That doesn't really make sense to me. Unless you were literally just using salt as a way to prevent it from getting out. And of course, there's also a giant steel door that we could see it bash through, so it did get out. It got out at some point. The other thing that we kind of got out of that is he was not just researching containment of this thing, or possibly how to get rid of it. He was also researching, looking for somebody else. So he was looking for somebody else. And I'm thinking, well, he's not looking for Richard, he took care of Richard many, many years ago. Richard could honestly still be alive at this point, for all we know. He was in a vegetative state. Now, I imagine Richard was probably dead now because he was old already, and but his entity stayed back. So for a while, enough that we saw it. So who knows? Maybe Richard was still alive. I mean, he was pretty old already. So it kind of made me think his entity was just kind of caught in this place. And obviously, he's not looking for Henry. He killed Henry and dealt with Henry. He was looking for his spirit self. He was looking for Thomas, the other Thomas, the one that we got to interact with. And so the thing that confused, the question I have that was not really answered is where is Thomas, the real Thomas? Obviously, he's the one that had to have called us. Spirit Thomas did not seem to have any inkling of what was going on. It was the real Thomas that called us, and she said, somebody's been here recently. The food was just starting to mold. Now, we know that's probably Lily. It could be Lily, because she's there. We know she's there. We saw her. But I'm also thinking maybe Thomas was there too. We don't really know where he is. Or maybe he's on this expedition to figure out what he's trying to figure out, looking for the Spirit Thomas. Except, we found Spirit Thomas. We now know where he is, but real Thomas probably does not know that, because Spirit Thomas doesn't feel his presence anymore. So, we don't know, is Thomas still even alive? He doesn't feel him anymore. But also, now that we know what happened to Spirit Thomas, that promotes more questions of what could have happened because of this. And so what we learned there, so we had kind of an unveiling there at the end of the bunker. When we were in the kitchen, we found a broken, shattered mirror, and we went around looking for pieces, put them together, and when we tried to go through the mirror, like we've been doing through this whole game, we came into contact with Spirit Thomas. And he revealed a few things to us. One, he revealed that he was trapped inside Henry's world with the Hound for all these years. So, and this goes back a ways. This goes back to the house fire. So if you go back to the house fire, remember when he finally came upon the boy and the Hound were unfazed by anything. I mean, he was stuck there with them in that world from that point forward until we released the Hound, because Henry's been dead since that time. So, and Spirit Thomas apparently got trapped in that world. So they had so material world Thomas was separated from his spirit self. The one thing that's really different about some of these characters, like Thomas, is that he experiences himself by talking to himself. We have not seen that with Marianne. So Marianne is always, other than her outer body experiences, she's always the same in both worlds. That's one major difference about them that you probably would have noticed right off the bat. Spirit Thomas and regular and material Thomas talk to each other, like having full-on conversations. So he was trapped, and when he was released, he contacted us through the mirror of the bunker. And so so what happens is that he wanted to talk to us, tell us what happened from the start. And she pulls out her cigarettes, which probably look familiar, and says it all starts with a dead girl, because this is the person she's been talking to since the beginning of the game. The game opens up with the dream and this conversation that they have. And once I kind of edit these videos, you'll see that in sequence. That's how I'm going to start all the videos that have them. You'll see that sequence. So if you want to re-see those sequences, the conversation she was having, because it was always a one-sided conversation from our perspective, and we couldn't see anybody in the room, and now we know why, because there was nobody in the material room. It was Spirit Thomas in the spirit room. So she was talking to the spirit of her father, spirit side of him, his entity side, in that room. And we were just hearing her side of the story that she was telling him, which is why they kind of cut us off and jumped to her closing out the story. So, he kind of gets the full idea of what we've been experiencing here. And he said, he was keeping her, she asked, did my father kill my sister, is kind of what she was asking him. And he said, no, he would never do that. He loved you both too much. He could never do that. He said he kept her here because he was trying to contain this thing. He couldn't bring himself to do it. And so, of course, Spirit Thomas hasn't been here for a while. It sounds like that's going to be a lot of time passing. Marianne was still really young at that point, and she's been raised, she was raised by Jack from that point on. And so, she had that kind of information from him, and I think, I would agree with him there too. I mean, if you ever ask somebody, if you ever put somebody in a situation where they have to choose between anything else and their own child, they're always going to choose their child first. A real parent is not going to choose anything otherwise. They're always going to choose their child. A real parent, like somebody who actually, there's exceptions to that rule, of course, because there's some people out there that are just shitty people. But, a real parent is always going to choose their child over anything else. and ask anybody that's a parent, and I'm going to tell you, almost all the time you're going to get that answer. Of course they would choose their child. Like, yeah, I know. I I have to say real parent, because there are exceptions to people out there who are just not good people. And so, I would believe him there. That's why he was keeping her. He would not kill his own daughter. No, don't worry, you're not targeted. I know it probably hits a little too close to home for you. Sorry, Bree. So when it comes to, when it came to that bunker, then the other thing we had kind of learned is that Thomas not only was doing research on the Ma, he was not only looking for his spirit self, he was also keeping a track of us. Because we're his daughter. He loves his daughter, and he even had a card with a phone number to the funeral home with the words, don't written on it, because he's telling himself not to call her, let her have this normal life. But he's been watching us. That's why he had pictures. That's why he called us. The thing is, it was obviously Material World Thomas that called us. What happened to Thomas? He was clearly alive not that long ago. So if he's dead now, which I don't think he is, what happened to him? That's my big question going out of that section. And we still, at the end of the game, don't really have an answer to that. So, and I want to think that there's a sequel in store here where we could figure that out, because I really like Thomas. He was an awesome character. I really loved him as a character. And I love Marianne. I loved every bit of this game. It was so well done. So that's kind of what we learned from the bunker. The thing that kind of closed that off was Thomas basically telling us, I can hold that the Ma's coming. We saw the Ma's showing up. The Ma's coming. He said, you need to go to the lake, because he revealed, Marianne, he didn't reveal it. Marianne picked up on it. Lily is not dead. Sadness may be a very typical spirit side to her sister, Lily, but Lily herself is not dead. She is still here. She is still alive. That's what she learned by by exploring this place and talking to Thomas, is that she is still alive. And he said, you need to go to her. You're the only one that can stop this, and I'll hold him off as long as I can, talking about the Ma. And so Marianne heads, he kind of pushes her out of his world and to this area where basically she just has to walk down to the lake, which is where this story of hers has always started. And I think they refer to it as a dream of sorts. I think she's mentioned that it's a dream, but she said the idea behind this is that her sister's at the end of this dock, this girl. She always said it always starts with a dead girl. It's this girl at the dock being shot by somebody who in the original dream sequence kind of looked like it could have been Thomas. But like he said, he would never do that to his daughter. And no, he wouldn't. She's still alive. She's still down there at the dock, literally. And so she goes down there to see her, and her sister, Lily, like I said, she doesn't quite look she looks quite aged. And I don't think it's just her age, because we got to think, Marianne's in probably her mid-20s, early to mid-20s at least, maybe late 20s, depending on that time gap there. I don't know exactly when she was born, but that's what we're looking at as a possible age jump for her. She was still pretty young in the house fire, but I don't have an exact date pinned down on that. I want to say that's probably in the 80s. So it kind of depends on what age she was at that point. But I don't know. I don't have an exact date pinned down because I don't know when modern time is in this. I haven't seen the dates for it. But she looked quite weathered. You could see there was gray in her hair. I don't think she's that old. She had cuts. She was bleeding in different parts of her body. She had bandages wrapped around her arm. I'm assuming that's all coming from the Ma, trying to contain it. But she didn't look very healthy. Let's put it that way. Thomas was trying to take care of her, but she just wasn't looking that good. Now, I had brought up some ideas that the Ma could have come out of her because of different traumas, but Thomas confirmed that it was Richard that brought that out of her. That's when that started. So they're down at the dock together, and she tells her the thing can't really do anything without the host, and she wants her, but she's asking her sister, Marianne, us, to essentially kill her, because then she can send it away. She said if the host dies, she can send it off. Because that's essentially what we've been doing this whole time. We did this with the Child Eater. We did that, and we got rid of that thing. We did this with the Hound, and we released Thomas, Spirit Thomas, and he's no longer trapped because of that. And this is our one last chance to do this with the Ma. But of course, Marianne isn't about to kill her sister, so she puts the gun to her own head when the Ma shows up, because the Ma wants her. It can't do anything. Her sister, is not. Look what it's done to every other host it's had. The sister especially, she's the only one who's still alive, but she does not look good, right? She does not look healthy. And so Marianne's like, I'm not going to kill my sister. The only way to keep him here is to kill myself. So he has no viable options to leave. Now, the other thing we kind of pick up out of the conversation with them is that this started with Richard, what he did to Lily, but it led eventually to the Neva massacre. So eventually the thing got out. The other thing that was, so the things that were revealed there is, one, when the house fire happened, the Ma is what saved them. So Lily made a bargain with the Ma, made a deal with the Ma. If it saved them, she would let it out. That's what caused the Neva massacre. So the Ma itself is what killed all those people, why there's blood all over the place, why nobody's there, why everybody died. So this story that Marianne had heard originally about the Neva massacre was the Ma being released by her sister after the house fire. And so this happened when she was still really young. Now, Marianne was obviously burned. We learned about that at the beginning of the game. She had burns on her body, but she was in a coma, but she survived, and she probably lived a relatively normal life, as much as a medium can. We saw that it wasn't quite 100% normal. We saw the notes from the school, that kind of stuff. But that was because of her sister. Now her sister literally let it out, and then her father saw what it could do, and that's why he left her in the hospital, and left Marianne in the hospital, and then kept the sister in the bunker. Presumably with him. I think he stayed down there with her. But so it is kind of like a prison. But at the same time, what's the alternative? She's still there. She's not going anywhere for obvious reasons. She doesn't want the thing to leave, because it seems like they're kind of trapped in that area. Like you can't really get away from the Neva Resort. So that's kind of what we got. We learned there at the end and at the lake from that scene. Then of course we're left with the ending of what happened. Marianne had the gun to her head. Her sister is telling her, her sister Lily wants Marianne to kill her. Marianne is holding the gun to her own head. The Ma's standing there ready, wanting to take her body and use her body, and it's kind of stuck in a bad place there. But the screen goes black. We hear the gunshot. We don't really know what happened. Now, I'm going to say, just from my perspective, if that were me, I could never do that to somebody I cared about, somebody I loved, even if it was somebody that I haven't, seen for a long portion of my life. I still couldn't do that to them. People always talk about how, you'll do anything for family, and it's like, well, no, I'll do anything for family that I actually care about, because just people being blood related to each other to me does not mean anything. But if this was my mom or dad, for instance, that changes the whole game for me. If it's a friend or maybe a student or a colleague, somebody I really care about, and I'm talking about really close ones. That's why I say parents first, because my parents are the closest people to me. Somebody I really care about, I could not do that to them. And I'm not saying that I want to take my own life in place of that, but let's say that you're presented with the idea of killing somebody that you love more than anybody else in the world, or killing yourself. What would you do? To me, I don't feel like Marianne's the type of character that could do that. To her sister. I feel like she is definitely the type of person that could do that to herself. They do leave it on a black screen, so you don't really see it, because there are other ways that could possibly have played out. So we don't really, we have a little bit of ambiguity there at the end, and I kind of wonder if they're leaving that open as a possible point for a sequel again, to kind of see how the game did. So who knows on that end. But that's kind of where we were left off with the end of the game. Now, if you notice, post-credits, there was an ending epilogue scene after the credits. And to me, that seems very significant in a way that I cannot explain. The significant part I can point out is that the clock, the stopwatch, not stopwatch, the pocket watch, sorry, the pocket watch, that was Thomas's watch. It was in the spirit world, I don't know why, and somebody walked by and picked it up. And from the voice, I don't know who it was. And it kind of makes me wonder, did Material Thomas somehow end up in the spirit world? Because his watch should not be in the spirit world, it should be in the real world. And so that part confused me a little bit, but I'm kind of wondering, when he's saying he's figured some stuff out, and he's not here, what's he doing? Maybe, and he called us here, so that's the part that, again, Thomas is the mystery here to be at the end. Like, we now know his whole story up to this, and we don't know where he is. He called us here. He's not here. He's his watch is in the spirit world. What happened to Thomas? That's an answer I would like to get. But what was going on there, I do not know. And there was that building in the background. Like, what was that? At first, it kind of reminded me of the building from Henry's world. The one that Spirit Thomas was saying, I finally got out of that world after being trapped in there for so long. And if you remember, when you approach the child Henry, the demonic psychopath child Henry, that was the building he was in. It kind of looked like that in a way it kind of reminded me of that. It didn't look quite like that exactly, but it just, that's the thing that it made me first think of. Like, they're not identical, but to me they had somewhat of a weird resemblance, and I didn't quite know what that was in Henry's world, and I didn't quite know what it was in this world, because we don't know what we're seeing exactly, other than the watch, which is clearly Thomas's watch. They've made a point of that watch being important. That was what gave us the access code to the bunker to begin with, which was the date that he got married. So, end scene, right? So that's what we got out of that last part of the video. If you guys have thoughts and comments on that, please lay them out. I don't really know what happened or what that means. I can't tell who that person was walking up at the end. It didn't sound like Thomas's voice to me, but it might just been because he sounded like he was out of breath or something, so that could have been why. Was it Thomas, was it not? Then it begs the question, was it Material Thomas somehow in the spirit world, or is it Spirit Thomas? Because there are two entities to Thomas, the same way there are two entities to Lily. There's the true Lily, and then there's the spirit Lily with the mask. They are very different from one another, and Thomas even said that when he was talking to Marianne, that that I'm somewhat your father, but not quite the genuine article, is kind of what he was getting at. They're partly the same person, but kind of different sides of each other. So it's like their spirit self is like an extension of them. It's not really them entirely. So, that's probably the biggest mystery to me is Thomas, and then what happened in that epilogue scene. Okay, so the other thing I kind of wanted to go over a little bit was that timeline of this, just in case that's confusing anybody, because that confused the crap out of me. So the story starts off with Thomas at a younger age being experimented on because of being a medium. He was experimented on by the Nazis, and the Soviets also were after him as well. He eventually gets away. We don't really know how, but we know that the people he's left behind to get away, he left them in a vegetative state. So somewhere down the road, at an older age, he meets this person named Richard, who ends up becoming his mentor, wants him to go to school to become an artist. He goes to school, ends up doing more architecture type stuff, and ends up getting married and having 2 kids. Down the road, eventually, at some point, he invites Richard back after he starts constructing this place, designing this place, and having it constructed, the Neva Resort, which is, I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly what the original idea of the place was, but it just seemed like a place where people could go to be with their family and have a vacation, sort of, or, stay there to get treated if they needed it. there's a few different ways you could kind of look at that place based on the setup they had. And so, he designs this place, and he has a family. They live in what we've been hearing as the Red House. Eventually, he finds out that Richard was a child predator, and he was fixating on his 13-year-old daughter, Lily. And, of course, things happen, and this is what brings forward the Maw. Now, Thomas, confronts Richard, and he does with him what he did to people in the past, which ends up putting Richard into a vegetative state. This catches the attention of the Soviets, who send a spy to basically investigate Thomas, a spy who's known as the Butcher, so someone that you do not want to be dealing with. So the spy ends up setting the house on fire in a way to get Thomas to show what he can do while he's interrogating Thomas, because Thomas figures out who he is, but not before he gets the drop on him and starts interrogating him. He sets fire to the house to get to Thomas, but Thomas eventually gets inside of his mind the same way he did with Richard, the same way he's done in the past, which is what brought him to their attention to begin with. It's the way he leaves them afterwards. They're not the same person they were. They're left in a vegetative state. And he's the one still there. So he does the same thing to Henry, the spy. But of course, Henry is not like other people. Henry, as far as I could gather, the best description I could give him is a psychopath. Smart, very intelligent, does not care what happens to people, though. And will do what he needs to get his job done. And so what we get out of that is that traps Spirit Thomas in that world, even though Material Thomas gets the upper hand, kills Henry, but now his spirit self is caught in this limbo in Henry's, as he says, effed up world, and they are separated from that point going forward. So the mother died before the house fire. She died in childbirth, so she's been out of the picture for a while at this point. Lily makes a deal with the Maw to save Marianne, essentially. They get saved from the house fire. She lets the Maw out. Thomas leaves, the Neva massacre occurs. I don't know exactly if that happens right away, how that works out. The Neva massacre occurs because the Maw is let out, so the people at the Neva resort are murdered by the Maw. Some of them are, it takes like a parasite. It makes some people its host, but eventually ends up killing everybody. Thomas leaves Marianne at the hospital because he wants her to be away from this, to have a normal life, and then he takes Lily and puts her in this bunker. Now, this bunker was already there to begin with, so he had this bunker set in place beforehand. And the idea I got from the bunker, based on the conversations they had, is Thomas used the bunker to separate himself from his powers. So he didn't have to converse with himself, essentially, because his spirit self and him would have conversations. And when he wanted to feel normal, he would go into that bunker and basically it would keep out his spirit self. But then, because that's what he used it for, he uses it then to contain his daughter because of the Maw, to keep the Maw contained. So, from that point on, Thomas is basically keeping her there. She's trying to, as far as I can tell, she's trying to contain it too. She's not like she really wants to let it out. So she's, as far as I can tell, she's doing as much. So he's researching how to keep this thing contained. He's researching how to reconnect with his spirit self. He's keeping tabs on his daughter all these years, while she ends up being raised by, I would assume, a funeral director and mortician, because I'm assuming he does both based on the setup there, named Jack. So Jack raises her. She knows she has these powers, of course. She figures it out eventually because we've seen the notes from school. She has conversations with herself, or she has conversations with things that they can't see, and she helps people pass on from what we learned when we first started playing this. So that's what she does. She would help other people pass on, and she would tell her classmates that she would help them with it. But of course the school doesn't like that because that's, they can't see it. They don't see it as something that's normal. they see it as a problem child. And of course, Jack, I don't know what Jack's take on it is really. So skip to kind of modern day. Jack died. We don't necessarily know why, but I would assume in surgery because he had a surgery he was scheduled for. He was concerned about it. It sounded like nervous about it. I mean, of course, everybody's going to be when they have surgery, but I presume he died in the surgery. He was an older man. Marianne basically goes there to fix him up, and she gets a phone call from Thomas, telling her to go to. I know what you are. Come to Neva Resort. You're my last hope. So, hence where the game starts, basically, and that's where she goes. So, like I said, that's the biggest mystery. That leads to the biggest mystery to me, which is what happened to Thomas after that. Why did he call her there? Did he call her there because he figured something out and he had to leave, and he wanted her to come and take care of Lily? Because he probably figured out she would find Lily eventually, and that's the only thing I can think of. Maybe he actually left because he figured out, how to deal with, or he thought he had figured out how to deal with, being separated from his spirit self. And so he brought her there to take care of things because he knew she could do it. That's the only thing I could really think of, and I could be way off on that, but that was the only thing I could really come up with because of, because the fact that he's gone. He calls her there and then just dips out. And it does not sound like Thomas. Thomas is one of my favorite characters in the game. He's got a very strong personality. He says what's on his mind. He's very verbal. I like the way he talks. He's quite hilarious to listen to if you go back and watch those scenes over. But he's also a very caring person too, if you really think about it. He can come off as probably kind of a rough person in some ways. Says things the way they are, but he cares about his family. I think he's a good family man in that way. This probably doesn't look good when you see the bunker at the end, but, what else is he supposed to do? So that's kind of the timeline of things for the most part, kind of leaving out the past of Richard and Henry, because, we've talked about them enough. But, that's kind of where those things, where that timeline goes from, like, Thomas's past to where we are here in the future when we first get here. And, of course, the game started to here right now with us making our way through the resort and ending up at the lake where we finally meet up with Lily. Now, early on in the game, my assumption was always that Lily was dead because if you look at her spirit self, unlike Marianne's, unlike Thomas's, looks like the people that have died. The mask. They have the mask over the face. Plus she's missing an arm, and her arm and legs that she has look like they're about to fall off the body. So I just kind of thought she was dead when I first started this, and I was like, now of course I played this before, so I knew that there was a real Lily here at the end, but I was just talking from my perspective of what I was thinking when I first saw this, and I was like, that's a spirit of somebody that died. So anyways, but that's kind of where that timeline starts and goes from start to finish. So that's all I got to say on that. But I kind of wanted to lay that out because I think that can be a bit hard to follow at times because we're getting this in bits and chunks throughout the game. So I don't know if that's helpful to anybody. I may have screwed some of that up. If people have answers or things to correct me on, please do. I would, I don't want to go down a false path of information on this. But that was really hard to piece together in my mind, and I've been doing that every stream since we started, and I've been really fixating on the story a lot and mentally and trying to piece this all together. Okay, one probably last thing that I want to bring up is just the game in general. My God, the visuals in this game. Okay, so when I first played this game, or not when I first played it, the first time I ever heard about this game, I watched somebody play it as a YouTube Let's Play series. And I wasn't immediately taken in by the game. I don't know why, if it just wasn't the time for me to see it. Sometimes I'm like that with games. Sometimes I'm a little bit temperamental. I need to see them at the right time. And I pushed my way through the series. I wasn't thinking much of it once I got to the end. And I really probably wasn't paying enough attention, which is why, I didn't pick up on as much. So I saw the cutscenes, definitely. And I knew those at the time, but I was probably missing out on a whole lot. But at the end of the series, the creator was giving it such good reviews on stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe I need to like experience this again. And then some, it was a bit of time passed down the road, and I saw somebody else did the series, somebody else that I really liked, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna give it another shot. And I don't know why, but I was so sucked into it the second time. And I don't think it was the creator, because I love them both, and they both do amazing playthroughs. But I just loved it the second time I saw it, and I was like, I really need to play this myself and experience this, because I felt like I was still missing pieces in a way, and now I can see how much I was, because now I've played through this probably 2 or 3 times full through, probably 3 full through, because I think it took me 2 times to get the original platinum on this, because I'm definitely a completionist and wanted that, and then here now with the live stream. But the original praise that really brought me back to the game was, my God, the visuals. Look at the scenes in this game. Go back and look at the cutscenes, or the in-game scenes, even in-game scenes. This visually was so well crafted. It is such an amazing game in that sense. Especially the split screen stuff. Oh, is that amazing? Just like chef's kiss. If you go back and watch that ending at the lake. Like, my God, that scene when you have the Ma and Sadness versus Lily and Marianne. Like, oh, that is so beautiful, the way they shot that. And it's like that throughout the entire game, especially the split screen parts. And it's like, it feels very disorienting when you're playing it that way, but it's also so manageable. Like, it's such a beautiful setup for a way to play a game. And you can see there's times where I got myself thrown off because I wasn't thinking the medium. Those points where you need to use your out of body experience, and I just was not even thinking about that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm stupid. Like, why am I not doing like the main game functions here? And it's like, because you don't use them so consecutively, I think I just forget about them. But it's like that, the design of the world, the visuals, and the gameplay. I love horror games. And I know some people have said to me they didn't really see this as a horror game, and they didn't think it was that scary. I'm like, I'm not saying it's like a terrifying game. Like, there's parts of it where I was legitimately scared. I'm not gonna lie. But like, it's a psychological horror game. Like, there's parts of it that are really disturbing. There's parts of it that are, even though they're visually amazing, like, they really get under your skin. And it's like, especially those parts where the Ma is chasing you. There's more praise I gotta throw out. The Ma was fantastic. That was an amazing design. All the creatures in this, the Child Eater, the Hound, and the Ma were all amazing. But my God, did Troy Baker outsell himself on that? So, big kudos to Troy Baker and whoever did the sound design on that with him, because that sounded amazing. Those scenes where he's talking about wearing you and calling you a skin suit, and how I was like, my God, that was so amazing. And I could not believe that was him when I first heard that, and I saw his name in the credits, like, because he was one of the top people in the credits. It probably had some of the most dialogue in the game, because you hear him all the time. But when he shows up in the game, I'm like, he is terrifying. Like, even parts where I know he's not gonna find me, because I know the mechanics very well at this point, he still gets under my skin and creeps me out. And I just love the dialogue with him whenever he's around. I always have to sit there and listen to all of it, because it's just so amazing. And like, the words that come out of his mouth just make your skin crawl. So big praise on that. And then the other thing when it comes to the game too, it's like, it's not just the visuals, but the sound is really good. And I remember playing this and thinking, like, some of the sounds in horror games tend to not be that upfront with you a lot of times, because the games tend to be really quiet. And this game did a really good job of making you feel like you're in the game. Like, it didn't really distract you from the game that much. But there are points like where music comes in, and especially at the end when you start hearing more of these, what you would almost think to be copyrighted songs, and we'll find out if they are, I guess. But like licensed music, like I said, right away I could tell that was Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, and I was like, oh my God, I could just melt right there. And I was like, as soon as I heard that voice, I'm like, I bet that's Akira doing the soundtrack. And I saw his name in the credits. I don't know if he did the whole thing, but I'm just like, sound in general in this was, just amazing. So, I'm sorry if I'm gushing a little too much here, but just overall, the game is so well put together, and kind of a final note on that too. Gameplay, like there are some puzzle parts of the game and some sections that are definitely a little bit tedious, but you're going to find that with most games. But the puzzle part of it in general was, I think, really well crafted. I love puzzle games, and this really felt to me kind of like a Silent Hill-esque type game. That's what it gave me a lot of vibes from, minus like the more action. Silent Hill's not really an action game, but more less combat. You don't really ever fight anything too much in this game. Very minor combat type stuff, but most of this is you trying to stay away from the entities in this world, staying away from like the Maw and away from the things that are trying to hurt you. And a lot of times you get up to stuff and you start thinking, is this going to be a boss fight? And it's like, no, it's not. You're fine. Like, it's terrifying, but you're fine. But like, as an atmospheric game in that sense, like, I love the puzzles. And I think the atmosphere built around it was a lot better than if this was more of a combat-heavy game. I don't think I would have liked it as much. Because it's like, oh, you get up these, like, terrifying cutscenes, and you're like, do I have to fight that? And then you don't, and I'm just like, oh my god, thank you. Thank you, I don't need to do that. Like, that's not something I wanted. Not ever would I want that. So and I think that's about all I really have to say about the game. Like I said, I could gush more, but like I think definitely a 10 out of 10 game for me. I think it was really beautifully done, and I would love it if they would do a sequel to this because I love horror games. So and this wasn't just a horror game. I love story-driven games, and this was a horror game with that was very story-driven, and so it's hits all my high ends for gaming. So, that is where we are going to leave things off. Thank you all for joining. This has been a lot of fun. This will be my last series I'm doing for the rest of this summer. I will probably, I'm going to be taking some time away to spend with family who are going to be here soon, and I will probably I'll probably get back to things in September. I want to say, I'm not really sure. But I definitely, I'm not saying goodbye forever or anything. I'm just taking a break, kind of like I did last summer. So, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Firebird, Clint, Bree, and I will see you all later.